We have a real story about someone who experienced a deep fake. Paul Vallas ran for Chicago mayor, but he narrowly lost by just 4 points in the Democratic primary. And he blames, at least in part, a deep fake recording that sounded just like his voice, but spread a very controversial message that is opposite to everything he stands for. Take a look at this.
These days, people will accuse a cop of being bad if they kill one person that was running away. Back in my day, cops would kill, say, 17 or 18 civilians in their career, and nobody would bat an eye.
I believe that AI is dangerous and can impose a danger to really the democratic process by distorting a person's record. I was a candidate who made public safety a top priority. Chicago's had more murders than any city in the country, more mass shootings than any city in the country. Crime is out of control, and combative leadership is failing us.
Paul Vallas will put crime and your safety first.
Because public safety was such a major issue, someone in support of my opponent was using AI to portray me as dismissive of police shootings. It sounded very much like me. They absolutely did.
We need to stop defunding the police and start refunding them.
Say the recordings were taken down, but they were up for a couple days, and at the end of the day, about 250,000 people saw it. I believe that the AI deepfake recordings had an impact of 15,000, 20,000 people who voted for Johnson would have voted for me. I'd be running the city of Chicago right now.
Well, Paul, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This demonstrates the danger of this kind of thing. How close to the actual election did this come out?
This came out right before the primary, and so I would say within about 6 weeks. And it wasn't the only video. My son, for example, is a police officer who was involved in a shooting, which was obviously a legitimate shooting. And there was also a deep fake video done of him, too, that had his voice, even though his microphone was broken, and had a picture of somebody who was very well tattooed. Of course, my son has no tattoos. And, of course, that one spread. And I spent about 2 days answering media questions about it, too. So clearly there was this desire to portray my stance on public safety as someone who did not believe in police accountability, and for somebody who kind of simply dismissed the shootings of civilians.
Do you know who created the deep fake?
No.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. And what happens is, even when they take it down, of course, people continue to repost it over and over and over again. So it was a constant reminder. But, it is what it is. I'm an old history teacher, so I like to point out that if you read the ancient historians, and when they talk about characters going back 2,000 years, it pretty much sounds like the personalities and the jealousies and the egos that you experience today. It's right. The problem is, people have been trying to describe or create alternate narratives on their opponents for really centuries. It's just our technology has become more advanced.
Right, and it's real hard sometimes to track the source of these things, right?
I mean, it's near impossible, but we can track it back to one source, which is the company that released software without putting out guardrails that allows bad actors to produce lies about someone doing something genuinely honorable, running for office, seeking to represent your community, seeking to bring the wisdom and the experience that you have into public service is an honorable thing to do. And you won't say that about yourself, but I can say it about you. And lying about someone, you talked about the ancients. Throughout history in Athens, running for office was a great honorable thing to do. You were representing the people. Bearing false witness against your neighbor, the Bible tells us, is a sinful thing to do. And that, of course, is what has now been made far too easy. You don't know if it was Russia doing it. You don't know if it was your opponent doing it. You don't know if it was just some kid sitting in their basement who thought for kicks that they would humiliate you. And that's what makes this so problematic.
How did this affect you personally?
It really didn't affect me much because I kind of expected it and I wasn't surprised. I mean, we have people that were hacking our websites to have me posting likes of things that people were posting that said derogatory things about, for example, the city mayor. And newspapers ran stories of that. And of course, at the end, they gave my denials that was actually me. But the bottom line is politics is a contact sport. I mean, Jefferson financed a publication that called George Washington a traitor. So at the end of the day, you just have to deal with it. Plus, I come from a family of 5 veterans, 4 police officers, 2 firefighters. We're really tough. So we just moved on.
Yeah, it's tragic though. Yeah, and the thing is, it's almost impossible to unring this bell.
It is.
And there has been research that does verify that a lie travels faster than the truth. It was MIT that did that research that says a lie travels 6 times faster than the truth because it is scandalous, so people are interested. It's simpler because it doesn't have to have detail. There are a number of reasons, but once people see that and make up their mind about that, you can come back out and put out a video and say, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. But if 250,000 people have seen that,
that's right,
and some of them believe that, look, we are a society, I won't say that we've all got ADD, but we are a headline-driven society. We read the headlines, not the details. And when you put up a correction, it doesn't get the same attention that the scandalous headline got.
And you're also torn between, do you respond and draw more attention to it? It's a double-edged sword. So that's the dilemma that you run into.
Well, that's called the Streisand effect, which is actually a real effect. One time that Barbara Streisand was trying to suppress some photos of her house. She filed a suit to suppress the photos in this publication, and it went from being seen this many times to like 1 million times. Because if you put your name behind it, a celebrity puts their name behind trying to suppress it, that's like throwing gas on a fire. So you're kind of in a catch-22.
I mean, I think there's 2 things that are really important here. One is that, of course, on these platforms, they're never held accountable. So you're dealing with 2 things. You're dealing with a generative AI platform that produced a deepfake of you. Then you're dealing with social media that allows the transmission of that deepfake to people in your community and all around the world. And in neither of those instances can the company be held accountable. And that's because the framework that we have for holding accountable social media companies, generative AI companies, it's not like the ones that you have to respect here. You have to think about the things that you say. You have to be careful not to lie to people, not to defame people. You have a standards department that will think about these things. But these platforms have no accountability whatsoever. In fact, they have no transparency whatsoever.
That's right.
So it's almost impossible to tell. And the second thing is that the Streisand effect is, that's from the pre-digital era, and it was true back then. In the digital era, it's being turbocharged because the way that platforms work is they decide what content wins and loses. They tell us it's a free speech platform. Sure, whatever. I don't want to hear the voices of 4 billion people in my ears all the time. Make me go crazy. So they decide what wins and what loses. And what wins is the thing that gets most engagement. What gets most engagement is often lies and hate. And often it's not the people saying, I agree. It's the people saying, that's dangerous, that's hateful, that's horrible, or you need to be careful, that might not be true. But actually that, ironically, drives further visibility for it because of the way that their systems work.